my sweet friends, I hope you are all doing well. Welcome back to my channel. I have a project for you today inspired by a little shopping trip that I did on Amazon to restock some of my shipping supplies. And so typically I would be buying manila envelopes for the 6x9 size I need for my kids, and I have bought those there for so long. I just went to reorder, and I noticed that within a matter of probably 6 weeks, the price of 100 of those envelopes went up from less than $12 to $20. And so I was in a little bit of a shock there because I thought, well, that seems like a lot in a little bit of time. So I went back through and I did some additional searches for other listings to see if I could get that price to come down. I did find a comparable product that was still sold at the $12 range, but now I can get it in white. And so not only can I use these for the shipping that I do, I can incorporate these into some projects for my mini albums and my flip books. And so that's what we're going to make today. Now, this is just the absolute fastest and easiest accordion folio that I have ever made. And I just love how that accordion portion was made with those new envelopes. And so I was able to create this so fast and easy, and I can get right to the fun part of adding all of my pattern papers and all the fun trims. So if that sounds good to you, then stick with me and we'll make it together. So now that I have my white envelopes, I can use them to create bases for some of my projects, and I really love the quantity. You get 100 of these in the box. Of course, the value can't be beat, and because they're white, they will better coordinate with the projects that I want to make. So I just wanted to show you they do come in quite a large box there, and then they have a sealing end, and so you would just pull this strip. The finished size of these is 6 inches by 9, and so we're going to take advantage of that 6-inch height, and of course the fact that we're going to have that nice finished edge on the sides. So the first thing I want to do after sealing it is come to my trimmer or a guillotine cutter. I would typically use that if I were up in my shop, but I didn't want to carry that down. And because this is going to be 9 wide, I'm going to first start by cutting it to be 4.5. And the reason for that is because I want to cut off the other end as well, and that will allow us to create a lot of additional space inside for the inserts that we want to add. So flip that around, you see, and we're going to have that open side, and then I'll line that up at 4. I don't even know if that is in frame, but from where I'm sitting I can see it just fine, and then I'll cut that end off. So we're basically going to have an opening at both sides, but that nice clean finished edge on the ends. So let's do that for this one as well. Now, if we wanted to have just a small folio style, you could glue these together without cutting them at the bottom, but you're going to get a lot more room inside, and that's what we want because we want to fill it with nice inserts. So the next thing I'm going to do is come in with my T-square ruler, and I'm just going to make a small tick mark so that I can keep this lined up well. So I'm going to line that up here on the edge and just put in a mark at 3 inches. And this will help to guide that glue so that it isn't going all over and crazy, and to keep it all nice and square and lined up. So I'll do that for the remaining 2. For the project we're working on today, I started with 3 of the envelopes cut each into 2 pieces. So we're going to have 6 sections inside, and we'll use 4 of them to fill with inserts, but want to adhere these together. And rather than adding glue all the way around, we're just going to put it in that line. Now be careful not to get it too close to the edge, because you don't want that to splooge over and make a mess. I'm just going to add my glue to 2 of them here for time purposes, but you could do these one at a time, and it is still really going to be a quick project. So I'm just going to bring these together by lining up the corner. And I would typically warn for projects made of mass-produced things that it would typically not be always exactly cut. And so you would have some variance depending on how you work along. But these are actually very precise. I was so surprised. So now I have my 2 that we just cut, and I'll line that up with the 4 that I had previously prepared. And you see how nicely those go together. Just want to take a minute to hold that in place while the glue sets up. But while we're waiting on that, I'll show you how I have already added some double-sided tape to the outside here. I will repeat that process for this side as well. And I'm going to use my 2 glue combo, of course, so that this is very secured. I was thinking as I was working along, I created one as an example so that I knew all my measurements were exactly what I wanted. And it occurred to me that this would be just the perfect way to store some ephemera if you get those packets, and you could break them up and keep them in the separate sections, or a recipe card, something like that. And now that you've got that tape on, you want to remove the backing. I'm so happy to have these in this more neutral color, because even though those manila envelopes are very practical, they don't always lend themselves so well to the projects that you want to make. So now, of course, we've got to come in with our Tombow, keeping that away from the edge. And because we have 2 separate sections here, I can cut this to perfectly match this size. So I have a piece of 110-pound cardstock. It's 6 high by 8 3/4 wide. It's scored at 4 and also 4 3/4. So this is going to give us a depth of 3/4 of an inch on the spine. And that is going to be so perfect for adding all of our inserts. So I'm just lining that up and adding that to this sturdy cover. And since you do have that double-sided tape on there, it will hold it in place as we continue to work along. So pull the back off of the other portion of tape, add more of your Tombow, and then you want to pick that up so that you can get it positioned all the way over to where that second score line is, and bring your page up to it, just so that you've got it exactly positioned where you want. Now, once you've got that tacked into place, I would go ahead and fold that over, press that against your work surface so that you can have a nice solid contact there, and then make sure that you work those corners and edges down well so that you have this well secured. So this is going to be a finished size of 6 inches high by 4 inches wide, and then our spine, as I mentioned, is 3/4 of an inch. So now when you open up, that is how we have worked in all the room that we need for those inserts. And I would recommend only adding the inserts to the center 4. Now, of course, there is 2 here, and you could put something in there, but there is limited amount of space to work with because you've got contact for all of the corners and sides here. So I would say do 4, and that way you're going to have plenty of room to move those inserts in and out. Now, the next thing you want to do is cover the outside with your collection paper and a little bit of cardstock. And so I have my cardstock cut to be 5 7/8 by 3 7/8. And the pattern paper is 5 3/4 by 3 3/4. And so we're just going to get a nice border all the way around of the cardstock and the base. This will also add some additional layers of thickness, and so it will be nice and thick and sturdy. Just putting the back on now for the purpose of it being a little bit more flat as I work along, and then we'll of course add some trim when we put the front cover on. So now that we have that covered, I want to add those inserts, and I think it's fun if we have them extend beyond the edge here, And so I'm gonna work with 110-pound cardstock. I want this to be very sturdy. And so I have cut my piece to be 4 1/4 high by 5 wide. Now I want to come in with my envelope punch board, and I'm going to, of course, add my tab top. I've measured this so that I can leave a gap in the center where my trim will go through. So you just want to put your first notch in on the very end, and then I'll slide this down to 2 3/4. So that's a pretty good size for a tab. And then I punched that there as well. Bring my trimmer back in, and I want to adjust this so that I can cut it all the way to the indentation of that tab. Let's put it this way so I can get that cut off. And I want to remove that excess portion so that it will be a true tab. So line that up and then just cut down until you hit that lower area, and that will just come right off. You can feel it go through there. You see now I have my tab and then it goes down. And so you would want to create these and then add them to your accordion with the tab on either side alternating as you go down so that you can have that tab showing, and then use your ribbon trim to hold them in place. So now that we've got our base done for the insert, let's go ahead and cover that now. And of course, we're just going to continue to use paper that coordinates with the images. This is going to be a cardstock measurement of 4 7/8 by 3 3/4, and then a pattern paper measurement of 4 3/4 by 3 5/8. And that is going to leave us that nice border of the cardstock in the base. If you have a labeler or something like that, you could include a label for the top, or if you have nice handwriting, that would be perfect. I have the handwriting of a 5-year-old, so I definitely would utilize some kind of labeler. Now, I do also want to cover this on both sides. Can you imagine now how nice and thick and sturdy this is going to be? So this is definitely going to hold up well. Now, my first tab planned is on the top, so let's make sure to position that. And then I've got my images. These are from that Spring Reads printable from my shop, and I love those oranges and the blues together, and the plants are absolutely stunning. I also really love books. I love to read. I use a Kindle mostly, but I do love books. So I think that this is a textural thing and a decor thing for me, but I would probably just continue to read on my Kindle. I have my image cut out. I cut a little border of that coordinating cardstock, and then I've also got a more rectangular shaped doily. Picked this up from Gina Marie Designs, and there's a nested set, so you could pick any one of these 3 sizes, and it kind of makes an eyelet sort of edge to it, so that gives it a little bit of extra detail and thickness. Now we can put that into our accordion, and you see here are the additional tags that I've made, and of course I've covered them on the back as well. You could put your pictures and journaling there, and then there is some additional room in the accordion. And then there is some additional room in that accordion for some other flat keepsakes and mementos, and you can tuck them in there and keep them well secured. Now, see, I'm going to just gently kind of press these toward the outside, and then we're going to get that gap in the middle, and that is where you want to put your trim so that we can tie this up and close it well secured. I do want to include that trim now because I want to capture that between the base and the top layer of our cardstock and our pattern paper. So let's just pull off enough to tie a generous size bow, By the way, this is a beautiful diamond satin ribbon from Really Reasonable Ribbon, and it coordinates with my printable perfectly. I'm just going to tack this into place with a bit of our double-sided tape to keep it positioned where I want, and then I'll pull that backing off and just press that down into place so I know it will be exactly where I want. Now, I'm going to come back in with that same pattern from the back just for a consistent look, and then I'll sandwich that trim in there, and that will be captured and well secured in between those layers. So now we can work on the cover, and I do typically have a look that I like with layering, and I put a doily and some flowers and some trim, but I thought today, because this is a little bit of a smaller cover, that I would have to sacrifice at least one of the layers that I usually like to have, because there just isn't a lot of room. So I took my printable and cut that down with a small rectangle die that has a rounded edge and a stitched detail. And then I did put the top portion up on a spacer, and then just my regular adhesive on the bottom. And then I did add a little bit of coordinating twine for that. Now, the second thing I'm going to add is a very generously sized flower arrangement. And this is going to take the place of a regular size flower arrangement and a doily. So I can add more flowers here. These all came from Really Reasonable Ribbon, and I just put together a nice combination. It's very full. I still have my die cut foliage there and some additional bows from my trim, and it's filled in with netting and some twine. This is a very large arrangement for a very small book, but I kind of like how luxurious it is and how full, and it gives me a slightly different look than my typical cover. I also have a couple of little bird charms here to match the bird in the image, and I want to include this underneath these flowers so that I can capture that tail. So let's just hold that in place and cut the excess trim there. Now I have this worked out so that I can include my image layered in between the die cut foliage and the flowers. And so I'm just going to work this in that gap. You see how I'm just positioning that? And that's going to go here. So not a whole lot of it is showing, but I do still get the impression of those beautiful books and that bird. So I do have a little bit of tape there at the bottom to hold that in position. And then I'll add that with hot glue, making sure all of those layers wind up exactly where I want them to. Now you can come in and kind of pull at this and see if any of it looks like it needs to be reinforced a little bit, but I think it actually looks pretty good. And so this is where I would just go ahead and tie up a nice bow here, and then I can remove the excess trim to make sure that this is going to be a perfectly nice bow on the end, and then cut this at an angle so that you know it is not going to fray. And now you've got your very easy and fast to make accordion for your tab top inserts. So that's going to be all for today. I really hope that you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, make sure to give me a like, a comment, and a subscribe. You can find links for those envelopes and the printable, as well as all those trims and flowers from Really Reasonable Ribbon in the description below. And as always, I'm wishing you a happy and productive day, and I thank you so much for watching. Bye!